The battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an event full of solutions for New Alberta, proudly brought to you by the Alberta Prosperity Project. Before we begin, I'd like to take care of a couple housekeeping items. The bathrooms are located out in the foyer and to your right. And the exit doors, if there's an emergency, there's one here at the back and one right here and the front entrance. And I want to draw your attention to the green sign over there. It's the Freedom Calendar. It lists all of the events that are going on in the area. So you might want to take a picture of that so that you can...
And that's what we did, the recordings, that's going to be there as well too.
Yes, okay. So the recording for tonight. If you haven't already, please help yourself to coffee and water over on the side. And we also have the membership, merchandise, and referendum tables. Please visit and learn how you can support our movement. Every voice, every action, and every Alberta supporter is vital to this mission. Tonight, we have three powerful speakers sharing insight into the future for Alberta. But we kindly ask during the presentations that there are no questions. We'll have a question and answer period at the end of the sessions. And no disruptions, please. We are here for respectful discussion and learning. If disruptions occur, we reserve the right to ask individuals to leave. This is in fairness to our guests and the presenters. And allow me to introduce myself. I am Willie Ferguson. I live here in Fort Saskatchewan. I am so proud to stand before you as a supporter for this project. I am honored to support these amazing people to achieve Alberta's independence and prosperity. The Alberta Prosperity Project is a nonpartisan, not-for-profit educational society. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and advocate for all Albertans about the benefits of freedom and prosperity through independence. This movement began in May 2021 in a humble oil field shop in Nisku, Alberta, where a group of Albertans tired of the inefficiencies of our provincial leadership and the overreach of Ottawa, decided it was time to act. Out of these humble beginnings, the Alberta Prosperity Project was born, and here we are today. And at this time, I'm going to ask Caleb Giesbrecht to come and do a prayer for us before we begin our presentations. I'm just so honored to have this amazing young man. He's a true asset to this organization.
Good evening, guys. If you would just bow your heads with me. Our Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening. We want to thank you for this great province of Alberta and that prosperity that you have granted us thus far. And so we pray for an overflow of blessing upon this evening, that you would bless each and every speaker, you would bless their lips, you would fill this room with love, that this would not be a movement built off of negative energy, off of anti-Ottawa, off of anti-Canada, but off of pro-Alberta. pro-you, pro-your principles, the fact that we gain our rights and our freedoms from you. And so we pray now knowing that we have hope, we have faith, we have love for a prosperous future. We have a future that we can hope in you. And so we thank you all of these things right now in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
We have a video now. Right?
Yep, I'll just make a comment. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to show a roughly 4.5-minute video, and I just want to make a couple of comments. We had no idea that this video was being prepared, but we were quite thrilled to find that it had been prepared, and it's specifically for Alberta. It was created by Jim Ferguson, and the singer in the video is James Kersey from Texas. But Jim Ferguson is from Scotland, and he started an organization called Freedom Train International. And it's galvanizing the freedom forces from around the world. And he makes the very poignant comment that you probably will be able to hear. He does have this Scottish accent, so sometimes it's a little bit hard to hear, that the freedom movement around the world is looking at what we're doing, praying for us, and hoping that we will be successful as an example for what other freedom movements around the world can achieve. So enjoy it. Thank you.
Have been cast, the die is set, but Alberta ain't ready to kneel just yet. They chose their king, their power was met, but we don't answer to Ottawa yet. No crown gave us what we've earned, just dirt and fire and lessons learned. Now the ground it shakes, the steel it groans, and Alberta walks alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free. From the rigs to the rails, the crops to the code, we lit their streets, we bore their load. They laughed at pride, they mocked the West, but freedom don't die, it just waits for the test. The cowboys ride, the farmers rise, 5 million strong under open skies. No leash, no lie, no foreign throne. This land is steel and it stands alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free. Kill the mountain, can't drown the plain, can't burn the spirit that won't be chained. He stares down east with a calloused hand and says, this time we draw the line in the land. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free.
Wow. Whew. Never told you that. See, I can't see over the podium, so there you go. I would now like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Dennis Modry. Dr. Modry is a cardiac surgeon and critical specialist who started and directed Western Canada's first heart and lung transplantation program. During his 32 years in practice, he also served on the Finance Committee of successive provincial Conservative governments since the Getty era. He is a founding member and chair of the Alberta Prosperity Project. He is a fiscal conservative and student of the Canadian Constitution. He's here to speak to us on the benefits of provincial sovereignty. Please welcome Dr. Modry.
Well, thank you, Lily. And wow, what a great turnout tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It's wonderful to see so many people here. Before I begin, though, what I'd like to do is give a shout out to our many volunteers, because without them, we would never be able to put on, for example, 33 events just like this in the last 6 weeks. So please give them a warm round of applause. So, how many people are here for the first time they've attended an Alberta Prosperity Project event? Please raise your hand. Wow, that's good. Great turnout. Now, on the flip side, how many have been to an APP event before? Okay, it's about 50-50 tonight, is the way I look at it. All right, so forgive me as I start, because I'm going to tell a couple of stories that those who have been here before have heard, but here we go. So I want to start off with George Bush Sr., okay, the former president of the United States. And he famously said that he hated broccoli. When he was a kid, his mother forced him to eat broccoli. Now that he's the president of the United States, he says, justifiably, no one can force me to eat broccoli, which brings up a poll that was conducted not too long ago, and the question posed was, what is the most hated vegetable in Canada? And it turned out to be Trudeau. It's even funny when you've heard it already. I know. So you didn't know it was comedy night today, did you? But this is the way it goes. All right, so there's this very distraught woman, and she's sitting at the confessional. And she says to the priest, "Father, please forgive me, for I have sinned horribly." And the priest says to her, "My dear, what is it that you did?" And she said, "Well, last night I killed a politician." And the priest smiles and looks at her and says, "My dear, I'm here to listen to your sins, not your community service." All right. Now, I'm on the other side of this. I like to keep people alive, all right? So just for the record. Okay, now, how many people here are already on the independence train and want Alberta to become a sovereign country? Okay. And how many people now who are here this evening are not sure and need more information to make a decision? Okay, there's a couple of hands that are up, and that's fine. Let's go to the next question. How many people here are pleased with the outcome of the recent federal election? Okay, there's a hand in the back, but I know what he's thinking. He's glad that this happened, that the outcome is what it is, because he knew that that would stimulate the sovereignty movement. So there you go. And he's right. So when we look at the electoral map after the election, what do we see? We see that Saskatchewan, Alberta, Central and Northern BC didn't vote the way the rest of the country voted. And that is a habitual issue. Every federal election is just like that. And why is that? Anybody have any ideas? We don't fit. It's a square peg trying to get into a round hole. Well, it's really because we have a different culture out here and we have different values. And speaking of values, has anybody read Mr. Carney's book entitled Values? Oh, there's a few that have. All right. Well, Mr. Carney, of course, is just the next step from Mr. Trudeau because the entire cabinet consists of the same people. So there's not much change, except that he's far better educated, he's far more persuasive, and he's smart, far more devious, and he's far more dangerous. And if you're not sure about him being dangerous, let me give you some examples from his book entitled Values. So this is what he says. He claims that Western civilization is morally rotten, corrupted by capitalism, and capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than anything else, corrupted by capitalism, which has led to a climate emergency. All right? Okay. And to deal with this climate emergency, he claims that there must be rigid controls, not just controls, rigid controls on personal freedoms. Think of the trucker convoy, not just the trucker convoy, think of the COVID mandates. When he says rigid controls, I see something even more dystopian than what happened during COVID. But rigid controls on personal freedoms, also on business. And business is the business of the oil and gas industry and agriculture. And rigid controls on banking and financial institutions that would fund those businesses. And he goes on to say that he doesn't promise that life will get better for ordinary people. Just think of that term, ordinary people. We're ordinary people. So what does he think he is? Ordinary people. There'll be fewer choices. He goes on to say that there'll be less travel, as well as, what else did he say? Less meat. That's the other thing he said. Less meat. More inconvenience and more poverty. Does that sound like something that you would be interested in? He also goes on to say that as a result of these things, assets will be stranded, meaning businesses are going to go belly up. People will lose their homes. That's what he means by assets will be stranded. And how does he intend to achieve these kinds of objectives and many more that are right out of the playbook of the World Economic Forum? Well, one way is censorship and control. He wants to control the media, and he already has controlled the mainstream media. It already started with Trudeau. And of course, they're related, and Mitch will explain that. So, in addition to that, control of the media, censorship. So, we've got the Online Harm Act and the Online Streaming Act to control independent media and also to control social media. So you're only going to get your information source at some point in the future from one source. This is the essence of free speech, isn't it? The ability to exchange ideas. And they want to thwart that. They want you to hear information from only one source. So that is what they intend on doing, in addition to implementing a digital ID to track your every move. And if they get their way, there will be a central bank digital currency. And for those of you who may have contributed to the trucker convoy a few dollars and you had your accounts frozen, it'll be a lot easier to freeze your accounts if there's a central bank digital currency. So on top of that, that's not it. That's not all that is intended here. You may know that he wants to hollow out the middle class, and this is how he's going to do it. To create an underclass and an elite class, and the underclass will do the servicing of the elite class. So for one thing, he wants to lower the voting age to 16. Okay? And this is so that if you're 16, 17, 18, and you feel as though you're getting something from the Liberal Party, when you start off voting Liberal, you will continue to vote Liberal. But beyond that, to really cement this idea, he wants to introduce a universal basic income when you hit 17 of $2,000 a month. And so what's that going to do to provide an incentive to 17, 18-year-olds, if they're getting $2,000 a month, to want to get a higher education, learn a skill, a trade, or get into the job market? So you see what's happening here. But that is all by design, all right? So how do we get out of all of this? Well, you would think that reasonable people could negotiate better circumstances, but we can't. What we find is that the liberal, socialist, Marxist policy is being advanced at a very rapid rate, and it's being accelerated through the efforts of the World Economic Forum as well, of which Mr. Carney is a prominent member that, like many of you probably already know. So when you understand the Constitution and Alberta's history, you realize that we can never change anything. The way our Westminster system of government operates, our parliamentary democracy, we don't have a real democracy. We don't have representation by population in the House of Commons. We don't have regional representation in the Senate. We have no control over the Supreme Court appointments. So what is this only solution? Well, the only solution really, folks, honestly, is just for Alberta to become a sovereign country. And truly to get out from under the oppressive over-governance, over-regulation, and over-taxation that we all experience. And just in terms of the term sovereignty, this is not a left or a right issue. This is pragmatic. It benefits everybody. And when I say pragmatic, freedom is really freedom from external interference. It's freedom from persecution. And when I say freedom from persecution, I mean freedom from political, economic, regulatory, religious, and cultural persecution, as well as regulatory persecution. And you've all experienced it, and perhaps you don't even know it, but you have. Now, let's take a moment and think about how is it that we got into this mess in the first place. And I'm going to take you back to September 1, 1905. There's a reason I said it like that. September 1, 1905. That's when Alberta and Saskatchewan were incorporated into Canada, right? And that was due to the efforts of Sir Clifford Sifton. He was the Minister of the Interior in the Liberal government of Sir Wilfrid Laurier. But if you want to understand why we are where we are at now, think of his words when he was giving a presentation to an audience in Winnipeg in 1904, before Alberta and Saskatchewan joined. This is what he said. He said, "We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire." Now, Canadian patriots in 1904 were the people living in the East. So we desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairies, that's Alberta and Saskatchewan's wealth, shall go to enrich our people in the East, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way contribute to its prosperity. Did you hear anything about the benefit to the West? No, you didn't. We started off as a colony to serve the interests of the East, and here we are 120 years later, and we continue to be pillaged and plundered for our wealth and to have values shoved down our throat that don't align with Western values. It's really that simple. And economically, consequent to equalization, the national energy policy, other confiscatory tax policies, and regulatory costs, we've given $800 billion to Ottawa. We haven't received a cent in return. The Premier has pointed out that in the last several years, we've lost $500 billion of planned investment into Alberta. Why? because there wasn't a business case for those businesses to invest in Alberta because they couldn't see any profit. Why? Because of federal regulatory and taxation policy. That's the reason. We have also are losing $26.5 billion every year because we can't get our oil and gas to international markets, according to a research report from the Frontier Centre for Public Policy just released a few weeks ago. And how has this been manifest in terms of economic growth in Canada compared to all industrialized countries in the world? Economic growth in Canada compared to all other industrialized countries, we are dead last in Canada, dead last. Again, why is that? Federal regulations and taxation. That's why. So let me touch on sovereignty because I'm going to talk about Bill 1 in a second from the UCP government. God is sovereign. Sovereign means there's nothing above, right? I want you to think about the fact that each one of you is sovereign. And when you give up control of your life through excessive regulations, you're giving up control, you're giving up some of your sovereignty as well. When you are overtaxed and those dollars are wasted for virtue signaling causes that don't align with your values, then you are also giving up some of your sovereignty. So think about it at a personal level, what this all means. And if I just want to put a sharp focus on it, the difference between where you are now, if you're making $100,000 a year, you're paying $35,000 to $45,000 in taxes. So you've got net $55,000 roughly left over, $55,000 to $60,000 left over to purchase what you want. What we're proposing, and all the math has been done, and Jeff is going to talk about that in more detail, instead of having $45,000, $50,000, $60,000, you would have $90,000 to pay for what it is you want. And over time, we think we can eliminate taxation altogether. So, and it might not even take that much time, like about 5 years. But let's look at the provincial government now. Premier Smith and her government passed into law shortly after being elected, Bill 1. Now, Bill 1 was the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act. They used the term sovereignty. Why did they use that term? Because they wanted to get out from under federal overreach of provincial constitutional authority, okay? And they figured that this act would help them get there. Well, let's look at what's happened. So the provincial government has been trying to negotiate with the federal government, and because it hasn't been very successful, they've launched some 18 lawsuits against the federal government in relation to oil and gas, development and transportation, with respect to censorship, with respect to agriculture, and with respect to property rights, gun rights. You didn't know, but David Lametti has made the point, the former Minister of Justice in the Trudeau government, who's now just been appointed as an advisor to Carney, that Canadians don't have the right to own property. Did you know that? All right, so this is the way the Premier has responded to the intransigence of the federal government. Is this really any way to have to run the province by having to fight perpetually with the federal government and get nowhere? And those lawsuits may take years, even decades, to resolve. We don't have the time, because what Mr. Carney is about to do to us, you're not going to be very happy over time when you find that you're in the underclass, which is where he wants to put us, because we're ordinary people. But what's a little bit disappointing, and I have a great deal of respect for Premier Smith. We know her well. She's articulate, she's intelligent, and she can get a message across. And ostensibly, her rhetoric would give you the impression she's really standing up for Alberta, correct? And in a way she is. But she could have done some things which would have helped us get more sovereignty that wouldn't have even required anything more than the courage to inform the federal government that she's going to take control of provincial policing, immigration, pensions, employment insurance, and provincial tax collection. None of that requires a referendum. It only takes informing the federal government that that's what she was going to do, but she didn't do it. And it doesn't really make sense because we overfund the pension plan by $3 billion a year, so we'd save $3 billion. We overfund employment insurance by $1.5 billion. Immigration, we have no problem with immigration except when it's uncontrolled. And it is uncontrolled. And we are being flooded with refugees. But on the other side, on the flip side, there are people that really are coming here for the Alberta advantage, and they are contributing to Alberta society. So immigration is a two-edged sword here. There's benefit and potential non-benefit. There'll be more discussion by my colleagues about this in a few minutes. So, and Quebec, of course, has control of immigration, provincial tax collection, and they have their own pension plan, which is far more productive than the Canadian pension plan if people actually only knew that. And of course, taking control of provincial tax collection is one thing. What we really would like to see is control, if we're in Canada, we'd like to have the right to take control of all tax collection. It's the golden rule. He who has the gold rules. Alberta would be in a position then to say to the federal government, well, this is what we're willing to pay for, and we're not going to pay for your other virtue signaling stupid causes. And that's the sort of thing that we could do. But the only way we'd ever get there is if we were already a sovereign country first, and they came begging to us to rejoin. But why would we? Anyhow, I digress there for a second. So now the next thing that, so fundamentally what I was trying to get at with respect to these 5 things is that her strong rhetoric is not backed up by actions, and it so easily could have been. And I find that extremely disappointing. So moving on from there, as many of you know, she's introduced the Alberta Next panel, all right? This is sort of similar to the Fair Deal panel that Jason Kenney held when he was in power. And if you remember from the Fair Deal panel, there were numerous recommendations that were made, but Jason Kenney decided that he would just take one of them, and he would hold a referendum on ending equalization. And I just want to make a point about this. The difficulty of opening and changing the Constitution, because the 8 things that she has articulated in this Alberta Next panel all require constitutional change. So I want you to understand how difficult it is to open and change the Constitution, and we'll use ending equalization as an example. How many people here voted to end equalization in 2021? Well, quite a number of you. Okay. Do you know why nothing happened? Nothing could happen. It was impossible. It was a virtue signaling referendum by Jason Kenney. He was trying to appease the Alberta electorate by doing something, but he knew that it could not happen. And here's why. Because there are 4 hurdles plus 1 if you want to actually change the Constitution. The first hurdle is that you have to have 7 of 10 provincial legislatures, 7 of 10 provincial legislatures agreeing to open the Constitution and then end equalization. That's hurdle number 1. Hurdle number 2 is at the level of the House of Commons, where we don't have representation by population, but at the second hurdle is you need a majority vote in the House of Commons to end equalization. Third, where we don't have regional representation in the Senate, there also has to be a majority vote to end equalization. And 4, remarkable as it is, Quebec has a de facto veto. So you can see, do you think there's any possibility of opening and changing the Constitution here? No, it is zero, but I like to say if in a 1 in quadrillion chance that you could get through the 4 hurdles and it went to a constitutional litigation, it would be the Supreme Court that decides or that adjudicates that litigation. And think about how the justices, the 9 justices are appointed, all from the Prime Minister's office. 3 are from Quebec, 3 from Ontario, 1 from the Maritimes, and 2 from all of Western Canada. So do you see the difficulty here? This is why we can't make anything happen that we want to make happen for the benefit of all Albertans. We're snookered by the parliamentary structure that we have, the Supreme Court, etc. All right, so fortunately we do have a solution, right? There's a legal pathway for Alberta to leave Canada. It's been defined in the Clarity Act. Do you people know about what the Clarity Act has to offer for us as this pathway out? Well, for those that don't, there are 3 major criteria. One is you have to pose to the public in a referendum a clear question. And there has to be a clear outcome. In my opinion, that's 50% plus 1, regarding international law at least. And you have to demonstrate that you have had discussions with other interested parties, political parties, First Nations, etc. All right, so let's get to the point where we have a petition, okay, that will force the referendum. And you probably know that the Bill 54, which was proclaimed into law on July the 4th, has lowered the threshold for this petition to force a referendum from 600,000 to 177,000. All right, well, we already have over 250,000 individuals who have registered with us, so getting the petition done is only a matter of getting our question approved and then getting the petition signatures. They get certified by Elections Alberta, and then it goes to the provincial government, and we expect that the referendum will be called sometime in 2026. That is the objective right now. So that successful referendum then, and assuming we would fulfill all of the criteria, that it obligates the federal government and the provinces to negotiate with Alberta. But what it doesn't provide clarity on in the Clarity Act, where it lacks clarity, is that what happens if negotiations fail? Okay? There's no clarity on that. But you could think that, well, gee, the whole thing has failed. We're not able to take Alberta out of Canada. Well, actually, there is something more that can be done. And it's based on international law. And I'm no constitutional lawyer, but we've got a brilliant one here right now. And when you look at the analysis of that Quebec secession reference that the federal government posed to the provincial government, in other words, does a province have the right to leave Canada? Well, that analysis by the Supreme Court gives us a clue as to what can be done. And I'm going to pose a question to you all. Do you think that we have been, by the federal government as a province, subjugated, dominated, exploited, or have we had our self-determination restricted by the federal government? All right, that's section 154 of the Quebec, of the Supreme Court analysis of the question that was posed to them. And then the second part of that is, because that defines, that 154, what I just posed to you, comes from the, is international law, and it basically says that if those things are in existence, that you've been dominated and exploited, etc., then as a people you have the right to form a new country, okay? But you get political and legal legitimacy when other countries acknowledge your successful referendum. And we know from Jeff and I having met with senior U.S. administrative officials that the U.S. government will acknowledge Alberta's sovereignty once we have that successful referendum. And so this is the way it can work. Successful referendum, and now the Premier has an opportunity. She can go down the rabbit hole of endless negotiations pursuant to the Clarity Act, or she can, the day after the votes are counted, she can then say to the citizens of Alberta, having received a call from the U.S. administration, citizens of Alberta, today I announce that Alberta is a sovereign country, and that's it. And we're out. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Modry, for all of the work that you've put into this and the hours and the time. It's truly appreciated. Our next speaker is Mr. Jeffrey Rath. Jeffrey Rath is a constitutional lawyer with 34 years of experience. He is a leader in his field and has been pivotal in representing First Nations communities and in constitutional law for our Indigenous leaders. Jeff is general counsel on the APP board and is a leader and supporter of Alberta independence. Please welcome Jeff Rath.
Wow, what a great turnout tonight. Give yourselves a huge hand. Hey, next question I have. Are there any Lamoureux or Lamoris in the house? Hello, cousins. I almost feel like Fort Saskatchewan's my hometown. I literally grew up every second or third Sunday coming out to Fort Saskatchewan to the hamlet of Lamoureux to go to Mass at Notre Dame de Lourdes Church just across the river in Lamoureux. My grandmother was Laura Lamoureux, the daughter of Alcibiade Lamoureux, and she was born in 1896, about 5 miles due west of here on the Bald-Ass Prairie on the other side of the river, delivered by a Cree midwife. So this is, to me, coming to Fort Saskatchewan always feels like coming home, so I'm very pleased and honored to be here. Something else that's kind of funny about my upbringing in Fort Saskatchewan is when we would come out to church at Our Lady of Lourdes Parish, where they'd have Mass in French, myself and my French cousins would be out in the barnyard swearing away in French. And of course, anybody who knows, French swear words are all sacrilegious. And one afternoon, ma tante Blanche, my great aunt Blanche, came out, and she was extremely angry with myself and my cousins. And she said in French, "Si tu faut sacrer, il faut que tu sacres l'anglais pour que le bon Dieu peut pas te comprendre." And what that means in English is, if you have to swear, swear in English so the good Lord won't understand. So I was raised from I like to say I was raised from a very early age as a French Catholic who was taught as a child that God didn't speak English. So that's my roots in Fort Saskatchewan. Another quick story, just because being here reminds me of it. I was at a 50th wedding anniversary not very far from here, not too long ago, and the old guy got up to speak at the microphone. I see a lot of husbands and wives out there, so you'll understand this. And he said, people ask me how we've had 50 years of successful marriage. He said, well, I'll tell you right now, on day one, I laid down the law. I told her on day one, she could make all the small decisions, but I'd make all the big ones. And he says, the secret to 50 years of successful marriage is that 50 years I've never had to make a big decision. So for all you wives out there, if you can please encourage your husbands, your families, your kids, your grandkids to make the small decision, the little decision, to vote yes for Alberta independence and get us the hell out of Canada. Now, the next thing I'd like to pick up on is what Dr. Modry was saying about how Mark Carney is literally an existential threat to all of us. It is an existential threat to the province of Alberta. Everybody needs to internalize what it is that Mark Carney has already done to us and what he's planning to do to us. Because don't forget that when Trudeau was prime minister, he wasn't really prime minister. He was a puppet. Mark Carney had his hand up his butt and made his mouth move for 10 years. Right? So, and excuse me if that seems a bit crude, and Trudeau probably liked it, but let's, just moving on from that, this is the truth, right? And one of the things that Carney did, and just keep in mind that Mark Carney was a central banker. He was the chairman of the Bank of Canada. Then he went on to head the Bank of England, et cetera, et cetera. So he's tied in with that whole group. So does everybody in this room, when you go to the grocery store, feel like things are twice as expensive as they were 5 years ago? Literally twice as expensive? Okay, well, there's a real easy reason for that. It's because Mark Carney and all the World Economic Forum dominated central bankers decided in the last 5 years to double what's called the M2 money supply. Okay? So literally in the last 5 years in Canada, Trudeau and the Bank of Canada, with Mark Carney's, collusion with the American Fed, Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the Central Bank of Europe, they all doubled the money supply during COVID. That's how they're going to pay for all their bullshit COVID handouts, was to literally just print money, and double the money supply. So of course, anybody that understands basic economics knows that if you take something and just for no reason, just double the amount of it, you're going to cut the value of it in half. So the reason that everything costs so much is that Mark Carney and all of his buddy central bankers decided that they're going to make, without telling you, because it's a form of tax on all of your savings, on all of your houses, on all of your equity, that they're basically going to cut the value of your money in half, right? And we're all suffering from it now. Right? This is what Mark Carney has done to us. And don't think that that's where it stops, right? Like we all hear about, like Mark Carney, like Danielle's, I call it the courtship of Danielle Smith. She thinks that she's actually going to get something out of Mark Carney that's going to be good for Alberta. There is not a damn thing that Danielle Smith can get from Mark Carney that is more valuable than a complete end to all federal taxation and all federal regulation of the citizens of Alberta. And let's talk about that, right? Because we all know as Albertans, nothing from Ottawa comes for free. Everything comes with some sort of condition, right? And Mark Carney, well, I might give you a pipeline, provided that there's a national consensus for a pipeline. And then we have the Prime Minister or the Premier of Quebec going, oh, we don't want no dirty Alberta oil going through Quebec. Right? So there's Danielle on Team Canada, boom, gets cross-checked in the face by the Premier of Quebec. Then she goes, well, we can get a pipeline through BC. And then David Eby from British Columbia stands up and says, oh no, we don't want another Alberta oil pipeline through British Columbia. Bam, she gets elbowed in the mouth by another one of her teammates on Team Canada. I mean, that's what it means to be on Team Canada if you're an Albertan. Every time you turn around, you're getting cross-checked, slashed, elbowed, whatever it is. It's not a hell of a team to be on, frankly, right? So let's look at Carney's latest condition for an Alberta pipeline. So he's approved an Alberta pipeline already. Like there is actually a pipeline approved. Y'all just don't know that it's a CO2 pipeline, right? It's a CO2 pipeline to go from a giant, get this, $50 billion carbon sucking machine that Mark Carney and all of his his so-called stakeholder capitalist buddies want to build in the heart of the Alberta oil sands to suck CO2 out of the air, turn it into liquid CO2, transport it to Mitch's neck of the woods near Bonnyville, put it back into the ground for no real economic benefit or economic reason other than they have this brilliant idea that this will somehow magically decarbonize Alberta oil. Has anybody heard anything more stupid? Right? Decarbonized hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbon. Take the carbon away, what are you left with? Water. Right? Decarbonized oil. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It is so stupid that you literally can't make it up. But of course, they sell this on what I consider to be the biggest fraud that has ever been perpetrated, against Western society in the history of the world. And of course, that fraud is climate emergency. We're all gonna die because of the climate emergency, right? So, that's what this is all about. So they claim somehow or other that the weather is an existential threat to us, right? And much like the ancient Aztecs that were literally cutting the physical hearts out of working men and women on the view that it would make it rain, these idiots in Ottawa that purport to govern Alberta think that they can change the weather by cutting the hearts out of working men and women in Alberta by taxing them to death, which is exactly what they're doing. We are dealing with idiots in Ottawa who literally believe that they can change the weather through taxation, right? Has anybody, again, it's one of the stupidest things that we've ever heard. And that's one of the reasons that I personally am so strongly in favor of Alberta independence, is I'm completely sick and tired of being governed by stupid people, right? Another example, of truly stupid people, Danielle Smith's new buddy, they signed an MOU the other day, big deal, Doug Ford from Ontario. Does anybody remember the start of the phony tariff war 3 months ago? Doug Ford stands up and he's red in the face and, we're going to teach the Americans a lesson. We're going to shut off Alberta oil, right? And then somebody goes, hey, Doug, all of Ontario's oil comes up through, goes down into the States through Line 5 and up into Ontario through Line 9. So you'd be cutting off your own oil. Oh, I mean, these people are so stupid, they don't even know where their oil comes from. Right? I mean, this is the country we live in. And then that idiot Gibault, our so-called climate change minister under Trudeau, who's now the minister of, they call him the minister of culture and culturalism. But here for me, that Gibault is now our minister of censorship in Canada, who will be in charge of controlling our speech on the internet and telling us what we can and can't say and throwing people in jail for saying nasty things about the Liberals. So we better get it out of our system tonight, I think. So anyway, Gibault, who literally his entire life was fighting against pipelines in Canada, was shocked to find out at the start of the phony tariff war that there wasn't an Alberta pipeline that ran directly from Alberta to Eastern Canada without going through the States. I mean, he didn't know, notwithstanding the fact that he's been fighting pipelines his entire life. This is how stupid the people are that are elected by Eastern Canada to govern Alberta. And I, for one, am heartily sick of it, and I say that it's time for all of us to tell these people loud and clear by voting to a simple referendum question that complies with Section 1, Sub 3 of the Clarity Act, specifically, do you agree that Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? For me, the only answer to that question is yes. And again, we could go on all night about, how bad the government in Canada is for us. But another one I want you guys to consider, and Dennis touched on it, right, is again, this whole idea of universal basic income. They literally, you're going to let 16-year-old kids vote to drop out of high school at the age of 17, not have a plan to have a job, not have a plan to continue in school, not have a plan to go to university, go to a trade school, make anything useful out of their lives. No, at the age of 16, they're going to be allowed to vote themselves out of school and sit around at home smoking government legalized dope, right? And be given $2,000 a month to smoke pot and play video games. Does anybody in this room think that that's the future that we wanted for our children and our grandchildren? Right? This is an outright attack on the culture of this province. Alberta does have a distinct culture. We're hardworking people. We like to get up early in the morning. We like to go to work. We like to earn our own money. We like to take care of our families, our children, our grandchildren, and our parents. And most of all, we want government to stay the hell out of our lives. And I guess, as some of you may know, I spent a good chunk of the COVID years, fighting the Kenney government. And I was actually the lawyer that succeeded in getting the only order in Canada declaring every single CMOH order, Chief Medical Officer of Health order in Alberta to be illegal. Every stupid order that Jason Kenney made, do you remember when he shut down the high schools and our 18-year-old kids couldn't go to high school, but they could still go to the strip clubs, the bars, and the casinos? I mean, this is the kind of stupidity, again, that we're being subjected to by idiots in Ottawa, idiots in Europe, that Mark Carney now wants us to join and spend $225 million of our money defending Europe. Did anybody here vote for that? I sure as hell didn't. Right? Billion, not million. Sorry, with a B. Right? The other thing I want people to internalize when we talk about Mark Carney being an existential threat to Albertans is how many people here own a home? Right? Well, do you know that Mark Carney and all of the cretins around him in Ottawa have realized that the biggest store of wealth in Canada isn't personal savings accounts, but home equity? That there's over $4 trillion in home equity in Canada locked up in all of your houses, and that he wants each and every one of you to be forced to have an annual appraisal done on your homes so that they can tax your home equity on a going forward basis? I mean, think about that. This is why when the World Economic Forum says you'll own nothing and be happy, right? They're going to tax your homes right out from underneath you, so then Mark Carney's company, Brookfield, can come along and scoop up all of your real estate, turn your houses into 8-plexes for all the immigrants that they're flooding our country with, right? And you'll be happy little renters paying rent, and that all of your rent then goes to Carney's secret offshore bank account and his Brookfield shares that none of us are allowed to know about. So this is Mark Carney's future for Alberta. Also keep in mind that when Mark Carney talks about Canada becoming an energy superpower, he's not talking about oil and gas. And when he talks about energy corridors, he's not talking about oil and gas pipeline corridors. No, he's talking about high tension power line corridors where they make up for the line loss and put power generation into the system with small modular nuclear reactors. And we're going to have nuclear reactors all over Alberta to feed Mark Carney's dream of a gas and diesel free vehicle Alberta. So just think about that for a second. Okay, we all know what winters are like up here. I mean, anybody that owns an electric vehicle, God bless you, but they don't go more than 100 kilometers anywhere in the winter, because not only are your batteries grossly inefficient, but the thing that eats up the most power in an electric vehicle in the winter is the heater that keeps you from freezing to death. So that if you're stuck at the side of the road or stuck in a snowdrift and you run out of battery power, you will freeze to death in an Alberta winter, right? Those vehicles don't make sense here, but Carney wants to get rid of all 5 million cars and trucks that are gas-powered on the Alberta highways in 10 years, right? By 2035, no more diesel trucks, no more gas-powered cars. He wants everybody to drive electric cars. Well, let's talk about the Alberta power grid for a second, right? The entire Alberta power grid, right, is powered by 12,000 megawatts of electricity. To power 1 million electric cars, coincidentally, you need 12,000 megawatts of electricity, right? So to reach Carney's dream of taking away all of our cars and trucks and having us all drive electric vehicles that we don't want, right? They're going to have to quintuple the size of the Alberta power grid with all of these Brookfield-owned nuclear reactors and power lines, so that everybody in this room, you'll be happy to hear that every time you have to go to plug in one of your government-mandated electric vehicles, if there's even enough of them to go around, I don't think that, again, we're ordinary people, and they're quite happy for us to stay in our homes and collect, UBI and not go anywhere. So if they even allow 5 million more cars and trucks back on the road, but think about that, for those of you that are going to be lucky enough to have a government ration card that will allow you to have an electric vehicle, every time you plug it in, the money goes directly to Brookfield and into Carney's offshore bank account that none of us are allowed to see. This is how corrupt Canada has become as a country, and this is why we need to get out. You know, and for those of you, sorry, for those of you who have been following, you know, what's been going on, Bill C-5, you know, is a big part of this, right? So this is the National Projects Bill, right? Danielle got her little cheerleader pom-poms out, and it was really good, and all the Conservatives voted in favor of it. It was unanimous, and everybody was really happy. But of course, none of them realized that this bill, literally, let's flip the pages of history back to 1938, basically could have been written by Benito Mussolini. Okay? Like, stakeholder capitalism is nothing more or less than the same program that Mussolini enacted in Italy, which was that Mussolini, as the supreme leader of Italy, got to pick which of his friends got sole source contracts for which projects in the national interest. He got to exempt his friends from the national laws with regard to the construction of their projects because they were his friends. Those are all elements of Bill C-5. Nobody's talking about that. And of course, you know, anybody that read history or, you know, knows what I'm talking about with regard to Mussolini, his word for stakeholder capitalism was fascisti in Italian, which was everybody together, everybody working together. The English word for that is fascism, right? So this is the program that Mark Carney has now enacted for Canada. And our benighted federalist conservative politicians voted for it. Danielle Smith thought it was a good idea. You know, the rest of us are just shaking our heads in disgust going, are you people really that stupid that you're sitting there applauding the advent of fascism in Canada? Because that's exactly what this is, and we need to get the hell out of it. So, there's actually some good news here, and I'm sorry if I was a bit doom and gloom, but anyway, we're very proud to announce, and there's copies of it for sale. They might all be gone by now, but anyway, APP, this is available online for free. It's called the Value of Freedom, a draft, fully costed fiscal plan for an independent Alberta. I would urge all of you to download it. It's at app.com. And I would urge all of you to read it because it sets out a picture of a very, very bright future for Alberta the day that we get the hell out of Canada. Specifically, what everybody needs to internalize is that Albertans, right, on top of the provincial taxes that we pay and everything else, we send $70 billion a year to Ottawa in federal taxes, CPP, and UI, of which we get less than 30 back. It's closer to 20 than 30. So there's this massive pile of money that goes out every year, right? Last year we were running a deficit budget. Every year Quebec runs surplus budgets because Alberta sends $15 billion a year roughly to Quebec every year. And then Ontario gets money from Alberta, the Maritimes get money from Alberta. The only provinces that don't get money from Alberta are BC and Saskatchewan, who coincidentally all voted Conservative in the last election. Right? All the have-not provinces, or parasite provinces, as I like to call them, because they're not really have-not, right? You know, all voted Liberal for the simple reason that they literally have a culture of parasitism where they're quite happy to live off of the backs of everybody in this room and every hardworking Albertan in this province. I mean, Quebec has massive gas resources that it refuses to develop because they'd rather have our money. They have an entire section of their finance department that is aimed every year at cooking their books so that they never become a have province. So all their hydro revenue, and BC and Ontario do this as well, they cheat on their hydro revenue by saying, oh, well, you know, we charge a penny an acre foot for the water as it goes over the dam. And that number, I'm just making it up, but you get the idea, right? So they have and they say the water is the natural resource. So they'll say, put on the books, oh yeah, well, there's $10 million in water royalty, but all of the billions and billions and billions of dollars that they make through hydro profits, oh, well, that's in a Crown corporation. That's all exempt from equalization. We're poor. We're have-not provinces. Please give us more of Alberta's money. I mean, that's how this country is set up from start to finish. And this is what we need to get out of. So now flipping back to the value of freedom. So once we stop sending $70 billion a year to Ottawa, and we fully costed Alberta Armed Forces at 3% of GDP, which is 1 point higher than the NATO right now, with $1.5 billion in startup costs, have a Department of External Affairs, that's costed, a Department of Immigration and Deportation, Customs and Border Patrols, tripling the spend on Indigenous people in this province to lift them out of the disgusting levels of poverty that Canada has left them in, through constitutionalized resource revenue sharing, which will give them a stake in resource development in this province, right? After doing all of that, right, this document states in year one that we are going to have between a 29 to $48 billion a year fiscal capacity surplus, right? And of course, the hilarious thing about that is that when we drafted this document, and there'll be an updated version probably coming out in the next week or two, because there's we're asking, we call it a draft fiscal plan, because there's actually a link in the document and on the APP website for all of you to provide your input on the document, and we're picking up changes and suggestions from our fellow Albertans as we go with regard to the document. But one of the changes that we have to pick up is when we drafted this document and we put a pin in it for publication, it was based on the 2024 budgetary data that showed Alberta with a $6.5 billion deficit. Since this document has been published, the new Alberta figures have come out, and this year posted an $8.5 billion surplus. So what that means when people say, oh, this document is pie in the sky and it's too good to be true and blah, 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 blah. Keep in mind, we're light on our fiscal capacity surplus by $15 billion, right? The other thing that I want people to keep in mind is, one of the things that comes up all the time is like, well, if we leave Canada, are we going to lose our pensions? No, you're not going to lose your pensions. CPP is a legal right. But we've already got, because everybody, that are working for the force, I call them the forces of evil, but the Liberals and Carney and the rest of them, are running around spreading lies to people in this province saying, oh, if you vote for independence, you're going to lose your pension. You're not going to lose your pension any more than if you lived in Costa Rica, or if you lived in California, or if you lived in Florida, or Spain, or Portugal, or wherever. Your CPP is a legal right, and the Canadian government has an obligation to pay you wherever you are in the world. Okay? The other thing to keep in mind is because of the fact that in year one, we are going to have a massive fiscal capacity surplus approaching $65 billion if we do the $15 billion adjustment that I was just talking about, right? The Commonwealth of Alberta could easily afford to cut pension contribution amounts in half and double the amount of pension being paid to Alberta seniors, which, as far as I'm concerned, is their right for contributing to the development of this province. And this, the same is true. Oh, what about old age security? What about guaranteed income supplement? All of that will be fully paid for by the Commonwealth of Alberta. And on top of it, even on a worst case scenario, LifeWorks has estimated that Alberta is owed almost $360 billion by CPP. Even if only half of that fund came back, and Mitch will speak to this because this is more his area of expertise, if only half of that fund came back, the first year would generate something like $30 billion in revenue or interest. And literally within a very short period of time, there'd be enough pension money there just in that fund alone, without even touching the fiscal capacity surplus, to double the CPP payments, OAS payments, and GIS payments to every senior in the province of Alberta without breaking a sweat. So that's what a free and independent Alberta looks like. We could slash university tuitions, by 3/4. I mean, all of these things are possible. All of these things are mentioned and talked about in this document, the value of freedom. And what I say in this document, and that's how I want to summarize it, is that the value of freedom is priceless. And again, and I want everybody, every time you hear Danielle Smith got out her little pom-poms and go, oh, you know, Doug Ford's going to give me a pipeline, or somebody's going to give me this, and somebody's going to give me that. Think about the fact that we're going to get all of that anyway as an independent Alberta, right? And so for every new pipeline we get, and I have friends that work at TCPL, so I know that Keystone XL is back on, right? You know, if Carney, well, that's the big thing. If Carney isn't lying, you know, and again, how do you know Mark Carney's lying? His lips are moving, right? So I don't know if we can count on a pipeline to BC, but let's think we can get one. And then we know for a fact, because as Dennis alluded, you know, he and I went down to the U.S. and met with some very senior level people within the present U.S. administration. The day Alberta declares its independence, we're going to have the shortest free trade agreement ever with in the history of the world with the United States of America. The agreement will be less than 1 page, and because we got to leave room for signatures on it, and it is simply going to say there will be no tariffs on any goods and services on either side of the Alberta-U.S. border. That will be the entire trade agreement with the United States of America between a free and independent Alberta and the United States of America. So what I want everybody to take away from this is to please download this document at app.com. It's free. Please read it, internalize it, and more importantly, share it with all of your friends. Anybody that doubts what we're saying, you know, send them a copy of the document. We challenge them to challenge the numbers. Because we put this thing together, we had bankers, we had economists, we had actuaries, we had auditors, we had accountants, we had, you know, business people, all kinds of people vetting this document and tearing the numbers apart. And now, because it's open to public comment, right, we still have comments coming in literally from everybody in the province, and nobody has been able to attack the foundational numbers in this document. The other thing I would like everybody in this room to do is when you download this document, please email a copy of it to your MLA, right? Email a copy of it to your nearest cabinet minister. Email a copy of it to Danielle Smith. We've sent copies of it to her. We're not sure she's read it because she hasn't said a word about it, right? And my challenge to them, and this will be my final point, and I'd like everybody to internalize, I'll throw a little bit of law at you, right? Under Canadian law, from a case called Frame versus Smith, right, from the Supreme Court of Canada, the standard of a fiduciary in Canadian law is a reasonably prudent person of business managing their own affairs. And my challenge for every MLA, every cabinet minister, and our elected premier is once you read this document and understand how much better off Albertans are outside of Canada than in it, how are you not breaching your fiduciary obligations to Albertans by not giving effect to this document and taking Alberta the hell out of Canada? So with that, I'm going to conclude my remarks, and I'll look forward to turning the microphone over to my good friend and colleague, Mr. Sylvestre, Mitch Sylvester. Thank you very much.
So how many of you are so happy that Jeff Rath is on our team? Thank you, Jeff, for all your hard work. It's truly appreciated. I know you look like you're hurting here tonight, so get that foot up.
I'm fine.
Our last speaker for the evening is Mitch Sylvester. Mitch is the owner-operator of Sylvestre Sporting Goods, a well-established business in Bonnyville since 1989. Mitch is actively involved in political advocacy. He chairs the first Alberta Pension Plan Initiative and is the CEO of the Alberta Prosperity Project. Does your wife ever see you? Mitch is an advocate of the people and speaks with honesty and integrity. Please welcome Mitch Sylvester.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I will. Okay, so this is the hardest job of the evening. It takes money to run this program, and we're going to ask you all to kindly donate if you can to us, and we're going to use that money to reach the kids. This is what we're going to do with that money. Honest to God, we got to talk to the 18 to 25-year-olds, and it's going to take a lot of money. So if you want to help us out, we'd appreciate it. And I just want you to understand another thing. My business is on 50th and 50th in Bonnyville, right in the middle of town. So how many times a day do you think I get asked to donate money? Honest to God. 3 to 4 times a day on a lot of days every week. And here's the problem. Most of them are customers. So we give a lot of money to all the projects, every minor hockey tournament, everything that goes on. So I get it. I totally understand how, God darn it, do I have to reach in my pocket again? So just, that's the deal. Okay, so here's what we have. We're being abused. Just have to understand that. Once you understand that, it becomes fairly simple. Who's abusing us? Is Canada abusing us? Or is Mr. Trudeau and his group, or Mrs. Carney and his group of people, who's abusing us? It's them. And who are they? This isn't just a Canadian thing. This is an Australian thing, a UK thing, a European thing. This is the global elites that are abusing us. These are the same people that have been colonizing people since day one. So my job here tonight will be to summarize this, because we've got 2 groups of people in the room. We've got people that are 100% convinced that this is the path, and we have people that are not sure. So by the time we leave here tonight, I want everybody to be sure that this is the path. So, and for those of you, I'm going to start, for those of you that don't understand what we need to do to win, I absolutely know that. So I'm going to share it with you. We need to get more people. It's very simple. How we're going to win this is with 1.6 or 1.7 million votes. We have 250,000 pledges, so everybody needs to get 6 people. It's simple, right? Everybody gets 6 people, we win. So Mr. Carney has take carbon tax away from us, right? But he instituted a federal industrial carbon pricing scheme, and the Premier of Alberta said, we're not going to pay that. So Danielle's got a list of demands, and already they're fighting. So the odds are that this isn't going to get resolved very easily. So what happened on April 28th? On April 28th, we lost an election. A very sad day for me, because this put me to work, sent me all over the province. I was very depressed for a day or two. I thought, and rightfully so I believe, that we never had another chance to win another federal election from that day forward. And does anybody in the room agree with that? And so, what are we to do? We either accept the terms of the agreement, or we do something about it. And here's the thing. We cannot any longer depend on politicians to save us. So what we must do ourselves is absolutely commit to the program. The way I look at this is going to be a year of hard work, right? They're going to approve the motion, our question, and if they don't approve the question, then we got more hard work. But they're going to try and muddy the water. How hard are they going to fight us on this? Very hard. I was talking to political people in the UCP today. They wouldn't be surprised if the federal government threw between $50 to $100 million at this. They're going to advertise in theaters. They're going to tell us how bad this is going to be and all the rest of it. And my job tonight is to make sure you understand that this is not going to be bad for you. And I'm going to ask you a question. Just say, for example, that this turns out to be a really bad deal for us. Do you think they'd take us back? I just want to know. Do you think they'd take us back? If we said, you know what, we're sorry for leaving, we want to come back. What do you think the odds are they'd take us back? So as far as I'm concerned, we have nothing to lose. Now, Mr. Carney, the boys have kind of given you the straight facts on that. So I just want you to understand this. This is an emergency. As to whether or not you want to acknowledge this, it doesn't change the fact that this is an emergency. And one of the ways that we're going to fix this, and I'm just going to take a step further and go into another little area here. I'm going to digress a bit. What if we win and the UCP says, you know what? We're not going to allow that to go. We're not going to do anything about it. So what would we do then? So I'm going to share something with you that I'd really like you to do now to take care of that. We have to talk to power. We cannot expect to get any results if we don't talk to the government. I organized in my very early political days, I've only been political for 4 years. I didn't care about politics before that, so any of you that were there, I understand and I forgive you. But the whole thing of it was that I didn't know the left from the right. I didn't care. I was a very busy person. I skied in the winter. I fished in the spring. I laked in the summer. I hunted in the fall. And I worked in between all those times and coached kids and played hockey and had a really fun time, actually, to tell you the honest to God truth. But now I see the abuse. I saw the abuse right off the bat. I saw it early. And I was organizing street rallies, and I've organized an event like this every month for 3 years in Bonnyville, myself, and with my UCP board now. That helped me out a tremendous amount. But this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that the UCP, and I'm a UCP chair, so I'm the chair for the Bonnyville Cold Lake St. Paul CA, and we have possibly the most engaged CA in the province, and nobody would argue that we weren't at least in the top 2 or 3. What we do every year is we send the most people to the annual general meeting of the UCP than any other CA in Alberta, 3 years in a row. And the reason we do that is because we want to talk to government. Because I learned a long time ago when I was organizing rallies that if you're talking to yourself, you're not accomplishing anything. You have to talk to power. Because we're talking inside a room and we're talking to like-minded people. But if we want to change something, we have to talk to government. So I would like you to consider that since it's in Edmonton and it costs $150 or $169 to attend the AGM, and you're all freedom-thinking people because most of the people in this room are ready to leave Canada, I would like you to be at the AGM to express to vote for what you believe in. Because we absolutely have to participate in our democracy if we want to win this. Because they have to be afraid to not put this referendum result at the right place so that we can succeed on leaving. Because they can choose not to. And if they have no fear of consequence, I suggest to you that they may not do it. So every morning we get up and we think about, okay, well, what's going to happen? Well, how are they going to attack us? Because we totally understand that they're going to. And the other thing we say is that if we do all this work, what if they don't do anything about it? So get involved with your CAs, get on CA boards, and attend the AGM of the party that's in power, so that makes this nonpartisan. I don't care which party's in power, we have to be there. And how we fired Jason Kenney was a very simple process, and I'll just go through that in a minute for you. This is what we did. We had 22 CA boards put the identical motion to the provincial board, and the provincial board declared a special general meeting and called a leadership review for Mr. Kenney, which he did not win. So that's how we got rid of Mr. Kenney. So that can be done, but we have to have people like you on CA boards that will allow us to all have the same motion so that we can call a special general meeting, so that if we have an issue, and you can call a special general meeting on any issue, including this one. So if the government says we're not going to do anything about a winning referendum vote, we can hurt them. We can get them out of power. We can change the premier at that point. We can change the provincial board. So please understand how important that is. It's the only leverage we have, right? It's the only leverage we're going to have. So please participate, please go to the website, please buy a ticket to the AGM, and please attend. All right, we're going to go over the salient points here. We're talking about those people that are running our federal government. They had, according to Mr. Platt, in the neighborhood of 80 to 82 ethics violations, which are crimes. And the one thing that's the most important thing that you have to understand, in case you're not convinced, is that they were not convicted for any of those crimes. So the leader of our country is like a king. He has absolutely no consequences to anything that they do. Now, if that is actually the case, and it is it possible for us to change anything? That is the problem right there. The problem is that these people are treated like royalty. They've put themselves in that position where they're like royalty. They have absolutely no consequences. Whereas you and I, if we stole any money, anything close to what they did, we would be put in jail. And in order for us to have a republic or have a democracy, anything moving forward, we can't have our leaders that are not held accountable for anything that they do or everything that they do. So it's up to us to make sure that in our new system, after we vote this out, that we don't allow this Westminster system back into government. Their attitude is very much the same. It's all about money. They want to take all of our money. And before we're done here, you're going to understand that that's actually the case. We are a colony. We are being abused by these people. Their attitude is, screw the West, we'll take the rest, and that pretty much sums it up. Our attitude, of course, conversely to that, was let's let those eastern bastards freeze in the dark. And however, we could do that, should we choose to do that, and that would be leverage moving forward, right? Because if we wanted to shut the pipeline, because like Jeff alluded to, their oil comes from Alberta, but it goes through the US. So we can shut that pipeline down at some point. It would give us some leverage to get whatever we need, whatever we thought was required. Okay, so we're going to go through these because visuals are sometimes better for some people. So if you're going to be talking to other people, you can remember that we only have 2 Supreme Court justices in all of Western Canada. Quebec has 3, Ontario has 3, the Maritimes have 1. And all of these Supreme Justices, Court Justices, have to be bilingual. So where do you think they're going to come from originally? Okay. The Maritimes have half of our population and 55% more representation. If that was not the case, we would have won the last federal election. So the Confederation is working exactly the way they want it to work. It's not an accident. This is absolutely working the way they want it to work. Trudeau appoints 3/4 of the Senate. The Senate is the group of people that overlook what they do in Parliament. If they think that it's not reasonable or they want to change it, they can stop that legislation from going through, but they're all Liberals. And here's the distribution. We'll go quickly. The Maritimes have 24, I believe, seats. They have 30 seats, there you go. Alberta has 6. And we have twice the population. So decide whether that's fair or not, but that's the way it's designed. Our net contribution to Ottawa is Alberta being abused. Look at the graph. $244 billion, nobody else is close. That's the money that they take from Alberta. $46 billion for BC, Ontario, the largest economy in Canada, $41 billion. Everybody else is a taker. And Quebec is the king of takers at the very end. $327 billion in that period of time. So when you see the visuals, it makes it a lot easier to understand the depth of corruption that's happening and how badly they're treating Alberta, right? Canada Pension, Jeff kind of went through it, so just understand this. We contribute 9, we pay 9, and our seniors collect 6. The reason we pay 9 is because we work harder. We work more. So for that very reason, we work more hours, we make more money, so we contribute it more to CPP, right? Simple. except that the overage is supposed to go into a fund for us, and we should be able to call that back at any time. And had the Premier done that 2 years ago when we started down this path, when we asked her to do it, we would probably have it back here by now. And we wouldn't have to worry about them using that as a scare tactic or leverage for us not to leave Canada. But however, as it sits right now, we overcontribute, and she hasn't called it back, and the LifeWorks report says that they owe us $380 billion. It's actually $346 billion plus 3 because it's 2 years old, plus interest on $346 billion. So whatever that is, it's going to be around $400 billion is what they owe us now. Okay, so just what could we possibly do with a $400 billion asset? Understand that we're in debt $100 billion here. Like we're in debt. We have $26 billion in a Heritage Trust Fund. That's where we are. All right, equalization payments, don't minimize that. As far as our report, that money would be all ours. That's $13.6 billion this year, $13.3 billion last year. Again, Jeff alluded to the fact that they don't put everything on their balance sheet so that they can collect all that money from Alberta. And everybody understands what's happening, and they allow that to happen. That's the Quebec staying in Canada plan. We're going to pay them to stay. That's what that is. No matter how you slice it, that's what that is. So they don't put Hydro-Quebec in their balance sheet, and if that's their biggest industry, it would be the equivalent of us not putting our oil industry in there. Okay, so we're talking about freedom of the press. I'm going to talk to you about freedom of the press here. The fact that this wasn't on the front page of every newspaper in Canada explains to you, for 2 months before the election, explains to you where our press is actually at. Right? This is telling us exactly that, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot change. You look at that, that is communism. You know what they call it now? Managerial politics. Managerial politics is what they're calling that. They changed the word so it doesn't sound so harsh. Communism is harsh. Communism is very harsh. That is flat out Marxism. There's no other way to put that. Jeff went through all the stuff about do you know what a technocratic dictatorship is? It's when big business is the dictator of the country, not elected of people. Technocrats are big business people. We're talking about bankers, we're talking about oil companies, we're talking about pharmaceutical companies. They make all the decisions for us, and then we pretend that when we vote, that our vote makes a difference. Right? So do you want to change that? And this is not a new phenomenon. This is something that's been going on since Thomas Jefferson. He said, I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies because they control the money. Absolutely. And why do people fight wars? Because they covet what the neighbor has and they want to take it from them. And if you control the money, then you already have the money, which is what they want. So why do they have to control the people when they have all the money that they want? Then you just keep pushing it, right? They go further and further and further, and they keep pushing it. It's like a game. It's almost like they're daring us to try and say, well, you know, you can't do that anymore. And Jeff also spoke about the fact that Mr. Carney's assets are not common knowledge. And then when you become prime minister, or any government office, you have to declare where your business assets are and how that works. It's crime in Canada up until now to have a business that profits from government activity. It also was a crime up until before 2018 for the press not to tell the truth. And the Liberals changed the law so that they can lie to you, so they can control the information. What's that called in a communist society? Propaganda. So what happens when they control the message? For us adults that have been critical thinkers for a long enough time that you're actually sitting in this room, so you probably understand some of that. You know, you can actually sift through the wheat from the chaff. But what about the kids? What happens to the children that are getting all that information from one place? So it's going to make it a lot easier to control them moving forward if they don't have to convince them that it could be any better. Now, I'm going to share this with you. That's one of the only good thing about getting old is you have perspective. When I was growing up as a 20 or 21-year-old, you could buy a house when you left school. And a lot of people that I know did. And back in those days, this isn't funny, but every year, three girls in high school got pregnant, and they got married, and they bought a house. And that was literally the way it was. And it wasn't even unusual. Nobody said, oh my God, look at those kids, they're buying houses. What do you think the odds are that a kid today could buy a house? Right out of high school. And not only that, I have friends that did that very same thing that are married to this day. And he worked and she stayed home and raised the babies. And that was, 50 years ago, when you could actually buy a house, one wage could support the family, and the mom could stay home with the kids. And as a consequence, they went and had a couple more. So my very good friend Leo, who built a lot of the houses right along the highway here to Sherwood Park, had 3 kids before he was 20. And he's still married, happily married to his wife, and you know what? They were empty nesters at 40. Cool. They paid at first, and then after that it was good. So what I'm saying to you, though, is this. That's how much things have changed. And it's normalized, it's been normalized, but I'm going to tell you that shouldn't be the way it is, and we can make it a lot better. That's what we're trying to talk about. So what's at stake? What's at stake is the richest piece of real estate in the world, bar none. And we have to be naive to believe that the rest of the world doesn't covet what we have here in Alberta. And we're going to go through this in a minute, like step by step, and understand that. But what we have here is basically unique in the world. And they want it. Because there's lots of places in the world that don't have resources like us, and we don't have to go far. Europe, China. 2 powers, major powers. And they want what we have here. And I'm going to show you that they're actually taking it already. When I became premier, I thought I would fix everything in 6 or 7 months. At that level, what does that mean? But everything is broken. So the Premier of Alberta says she can't fix anything. So what that means to me is that's how corrupt it is. That's all it means. Because if she cannot fix it where she's sitting, way up there, what's the problem? The problem is the bureaucrats are running the whole thing. That's the problem. So that is the deep state by extension. No matter how you slice that, that's the deep state. The deep state is all those people up there that are calling the shots. There's no fixing that. The system is broken. Poilievre said the same thing. Canada is broken. Trump said the same thing. Like him or hate him, he did say that the system is completely broken. So in order to fix that system, we have to get out of it and literally reboot it. Change it all. All right. COVID restrictions, we're all about political power and control. I alluded to the fact that they're pushing us and pushing us and pushing us. They wanted to see how far they could push us. In COVID, they pushed us a long ways. Right? They pushed us a long ways. They got us here, though. I'm not going to lie to you. COVID woke me up and woke a lot of other people up, but that's what they got us here. Dennis is talking about the Online Harms Act and C-11. So these are things that in my father's time and in my young adult life were stuff that we would have never put up with. Where's the rage? Where's the outrage? How can we allow this? And they're doing it openly. They're doing it right in front of us. And they don't, you ever see, did the Liberals answer a question in the last 10 years? How'd that work? C-293. Now here's what they're doing. They're making laws so that in the future they can commit more crimes. Now if you think that sounds out there, C-293 says, in the next emergency, the federal government will be able to seize your land and your herd. How does that work? And what's the purpose of it? The purpose of it is, like Dennis said, hollow out the middle class to make you poorer and them richer. And I don't know if you're aware, but the cost of fertilizers doubled, the cost of buying equipment's up 60%, the cost of everything. A lot of these big producers are on a thin line. I have a friend that farmed a lot of acres last year that came into the store and he made $12,000 last year, and he has millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment, and he farmed I don't know how many quarters of land, 30 or 40 quarters of land. So just saying. China hits Canada with retaliatory tariffs on canola oil and peas after we imposed a tariff, our federal government imposed a tariff on electrical Chinese cars that nobody in Canada buys. And they totally understand that that's the consequence of it, again, to attack our producers. Danielle said that they're literally sabotaging our industry. That comes from her. They're sabotaging industry. Now, as a Canadian, as a business person, I never thought that they would actually ever see the day where the federal government would try to sabotage our own people and our own industry. It's those people. In 2015, this started. Just understand this. We're dealing with a group of very bad people. And they're not going away on their own. And even if we win our referendum, we're still going to have a fight on our hands. But we have to win the referendum or we don't even have to worry about a fight. We're going to capitulate to that nonsense. Oil is in higher demand every year. These are the bills that affect Alberta. Again, unfair. Nowhere else in Canada do they try and put a stop on industry based on policies. Blocking pipelines, tanker bans in the west, but in the east they bring in 500,000 barrels a day of Arab oil. Right? Understand that. This money that's lost, what it does is it doesn't allow you to have a good year and another good year and another good year so that you can put up with a bad year or two. So once that money's lost, and that money's invested everywhere else in the world, it's not like it's not been invested. Japan, Greece, and Germany came to Alberta with their hat in hand and asked if we would sell them natural gas. And we said no. So how many jobs did we lose? Many tens of thousands. Trillions of dollars in turnover and assets, and something that would have paid us for 40 or 50 years. And they said, no, it's not in our business plan. Meaning that they didn't want to develop our industry. They wanted to keep it in the ground. Meaning they wanted to keep you poor. That's exactly what that means. There's no camouflaging that. That's very clear what they're doing. Alberta, Norway came to Alberta years ago to study our oil patch. 25 years ago or so ago. So they have $1.3 trillion in an oil fund. Alberta has no money in an oil fund, and Alberta's $100 billion in the hole. And guess what I did today? I went to look to see how much oil Alberta produces and how much oil Norway produces. Norway produces 2 million barrels a day. Alberta produces 4.6 million barrels a day, 2.5 times more than Norway. And they have $1.3 trillion in an oil fund, and we have nothing. So we produce 2.5 times more oil than them, and they have $1.3 trillion oil fund, and we have nothing. So I want to ask you a question. Where the hell did the money go? Right? Just understand how much money that is. So according to that math, we should have double that in an oil fund. If we had $1.3 trillion in an oil fund, we wouldn't have to pay any tax at all in Alberta. None. If we had twice that much, well, go figure. So that's how bad this actually is. That's how much they're taking from us, right there. And they want to cap production, which is going to cost us 40,000 jobs, which is going to create a recession, which they said is going to happen. And news out yesterday 80% of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. 80%. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are on the precipice of a crisis. Because if anything changes or if anything slows down, 80% of Canadians are not going to be able to pay their bills. And that universal basic income is going to come to people. And what's the best example of universal basic income in Canada?
Welfare.
Native reserves. And Jeff alluded to the fact that they live in abject poverty. So that's not the answer. Right? Just saying. All right, carbon tax. This is a lie. This is a big lie, and let's just call it for what it is. Okay? Carbon taxes cost Canadians billions of dollars over 5 years, hurting the economy while reducing CO2 emissions by 11.9 gigatons. China emits 11.9 gigatons every day and a half. 5 years of restraint, 5 years of killing Alberta industry, 5 years of doing all of that, and China produces all that in a day and a half. And climate change, all the fires that you see, the Americans actually sent a letter to the government of Canada telling us to quit setting fires so they could breathe. We just saw it yesterday because all the smoke's in the air. So 100 out of 111 fires are caused by by humans in Manitoba. All right, here's all the taxes we pay. This is the taxes that we're going to lose if we become an independent nation. Okay, just understand this. Carbon tax, personal income tax, corporate tax, goods and services tax, excise tax, fuel excise tax, alcohol excise duty, tobacco excise duty, cannabis excise duty, customs duties, air traveler security tax, luxury tax, provincial tax, capital gains, land transfer tax, media tax, regulation tax, CPP tax, business tax, estate tax, and they're going to tax your house if it's paid for. So there is this would be about 30% of the tax that you pay. And it's hidden. People say to us, oh, I don't pay that much tax on my income tax. Well, no, you pay it every time you buy something. You pay it when you die, because what happens when you die? Because when you die, you all of a sudden have this massive asset. And they're telling everybody, oh, the estate tax is for rich people. But when you die and you have a $600,000 house and a little bit of money in the bank and everything that, your net worth is $700,000 or $800,000, that puts you in the high income bracket. And you know what the tax is on estate tax? 65%. So if you have paid, just for example, if you paid $200,000 for your house and now it's worth $500 million, you would pay 65% on the 300. So your kids would not be able to inherit your after-tax wealth. So why are they doing that? Because they want to control your wealth, and by controlling your wealth, you can't give it to your kids, so they're going to make it hard for them to accumulate any money and keep them poor. That's it. There's no other reason for it. And then they give the money away to all these other places, but not to our seniors. Okay, so just right there, I haven't added that up, but it's about $5 billion. Our seniors we pay our seniors $6 billion a year. Just by not doing that foreign aid, we could double their take and not affect anything, right? And our servicemen, all the people that are in the military, all the rest of that kind of stuff. And look at Iraq at the bottom. Iraq produces just as much oil as Alberta. And look at them sitting over there with a $1 billion tax contribution from Canada. And I'm going to share something with you. This is a money laundering scheme. Like that or don't like it, if you go to the government of Iraq and you say to them, I'm going to give you a $1.04 billion check, I want $600 million back. What do you think the odds are they would say yes? 100%. Absolutely 100%. And the war in Afghanistan was the biggest money laundering scheme, it's world famous, in the history of the world. And that's why they dumped all that product into the ocean, because they didn't want it to be counted. So when they left Afghanistan, you notice they left everything there. It was a big deal. Obama left all that stuff in Afghanistan, and the Americans were saying, oh, you can't leave all that stuff there. Well, they didn't want to count it. They didn't want it counted. That's why they left it there. You can fly a helicopter over the border. You don't have to leave it there, right? Or a boat. You can take it over the border as well. All right, here's the rest of this. An audit shows $187 billion worth of Liberal infrastructure spending, find 20,000 missing projects. that means they're stealing from us. And nobody's going to jail for that. And the reason they're not going to jail for that is because they're above the law. And the fact that they're above the law means that we can't negotiate with them and we have to leave. It's that simple. And this is the other thing that they do when they want to control you. They take your firearms away. Except Doug Ford got his house broken into. So now he wants to be allowed to shoot criminals who break into his house. He thinks it's a good idea to have a gun. However, all political power comes from the barrel of a gun. The Communist Party must command all the guns. That way no guns can ever be used to command the party. And that is the reason why they want to take your guns. The average Canadian gun owner is 4 times less likely to murder somebody than the average Canadian citizen. So that being said, they're not taking your guns away to keep you safe. If the government says it's for your own good, I can trust you. Trust me, it is not for your own good. It is just exactly the opposite. If they say it's for your own good, run and hide, because that's what they did, COVID vaccination, all the rest of that kind of stuff. This is for your own good. Do it. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Hopefully that's what a new Alberta gun law is going to look like, right there. So, a couple sentences on immigration. They're bringing all these people here to change our politics. That's what they're doing. I'm okay with immigration. I'm okay with controlled immigration. I'm not okay with uncontrolled immigration. And I'm not okay with immigration that brings people to here so that they can change our politics so that we can never win another election. That's what I'm not okay with. Did you notice we got tariffed 35% by the Americans yesterday? Do you know why? Because we're the biggest producer of fentanyl, illegal fentanyl in the world. In Valley View, they found 6,700 kilograms of fentanyl-making material in a lab there. How much fentanyl do you think you can make with, 7 tons of chemical? And fentanyl is like the size of a grain of salt, right? He said in that thing, and I read the declaration today, that you got to stop that fentanyl or we're going to tax you more. And anything that you try to counter-tariff us, we're going to add to the top of our tariff. So they're not playing around with that. They're going to stop that. And we inspect 1% of the sea cans that come over from China, and that fentanyl stuff comes over from China. So just so you know. And that's about the refugees. The refugees, if there's 5 million work visas that are going to expire in Canada this year, and they've self-admitted that they don't know where these people are. And if they apply for refugee status, they're entitled to up to $83,000 a year in compensation from our government with no tax. The average Canadian earns $63,000 and pays 20% tax on that. So tell me, how much sense does that make? The reason they're doing that is so they can change our politics. And with that, I'm going to leave you. I want to see you at the AGM. I will be there. Take care. All right, we're going to have a Q&A now. And anybody that has any questions, come on up. We'll be glad to answer them.
Mitch, thank you for your
Okay. I'm curious about the development of data management centers and carbon capture facilities. Currently, it appears Daniel Smith supports the development of these. I'm curious to know where you stand on these issues and what you think of Daniel Smith supporting them.
Okay, well, I'm totally against carbon capture. Jeff is totally against carbon capture. I can speak for him for the one time that I've had the opportunity to do that. So carbon capture is a joke. I've talked to Cenovus. I've had meetings with Cenovus. This is coming to Bonnyville, where I live, and they wanted my support on it, and I literally laughed at them. I said, come on. We're going to suck CO2 out of the air. and we're going to stick it in the ground, and we're going to be able to measure that. Can we measure that? It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We ought to start laughing at this kind of stuff, just so they understand that we understand how stupid it is. Okay, good. And as far as AI and producing that, you know what, I have no answer for that. I don't know what they're going to do with that. As far as I'm personally concerned, stick that on top of a gas well and do all that if they're going to do that. You know, I mean, that's what they suck up a tremendous amount of power. And so they're going to do that. And I don't know what Danielle's position is on that, but I haven't studied it and I don't care. Dennis maybe would want to.
Is this about IT? Were you talking about IT?
Yeah.
Yeah, the data management centers. Well, I think it's not a bad idea for Alberta to make an attempt at, you know, being in, you know, one of the leaders of the development of information technology. So, you know, I support that, but there's going to be an increased electrical requirement for that, that's for sure. I want to digress just for 1 second. I want to give a shout out to Michael Wagner in the back at the table. Many of you will probably know who he is. But Michael has a PhD in political science. Actually, he has 3 degrees. The last one's a PhD. He's written several books, I really encourage you to buy at least 1 or 2 or maybe all 5 of them, because he absolutely has explained brilliantly what has happened to Alberta within the entire Confederate structure. So. And before I forget, one more thing that I think is really important. Don't talk about separation. Separation is like getting your leg amputated, right? Talk about sovereignty, independence. Separation is a negative. Sovereignty or Alberta independence is a positive.
Hi. I actually used to live in Bonneville for 6 years, and I shop at your store quite a bit. But anyway, my question might be too early, but my question is this. If Danielle Smith is not going to join this wagon of independent Alberta, what would happen to her? And when I believe we will win in the next election or referendum in January of next year, who will be the leader?
Okay, so this is going to come. So I talked to them today for quite a long time. Here's the deal: build the train, and they will get in front of it. Will the premier do that? We'll see. But if she doesn't do that, then our option is an SGM, and we pick a new leader. That's the option. And I mean, but you're going to have to understand that that's not an option that, you know, right now I would prefer that she work with us and help us get this over the finish line. That would be my preference. Because, you know what, we had an SGM and people are afraid to do that again and again and again. Like, we just want to flip leaders out. Because we're seeing that it's not about the leaders, it's about us. And we can't depend on them to do the stuff, so let's go to the AGM, put her feet to the fire, and force her to get in front of this. That's the way I see it.
But still will be conservative, will be leading independent sovereign Canada or Alberta?
Well, you know what? Back in ancient Greece, they changed their leaders every year. I really like that. Honest to God, I really like that. I would like us to change our leaders every year, because the reason they changed their leaders every year is because they were afraid of tyranny. And back in those days, with a tyrant, and if, you know, they would be going to war, and there was real serious consequences to that, so they thought it would be prudent to not go to war as much and just change their leaders. So I would like that, and I'd like the direct democracy system from Switzerland, and Jeff will extrapolate on that.
No, my view on it has always been that politicians are like socks or underwear. You should change them as quickly and often as possible. So thank you for the question. Yeah.
How much do we expect to pay for the parks and the army bases in Alberta?
We don't expect to pay anything for them. The simple fact of the matter is that Alberta has contributed over $800 billion to Canada equalization. And if you actually took, an actuarial accounting of that and applied compound interest to it for all the years that we've been paying into that, we're owed several $1 trillion by Ottawa and the rest of Canada. So our position is the national parks will be the national parks of the Commonwealth of Alberta, and the military bases will take them over, and they'll now become the bases of the sovereign, the sovereign country of Alberta.
Thank you to
Before
everyone who's involved.
Before you go, there's one other thing to this gentleman's question. 60% of Alberta lands are Crown lands, but 81% of the Crown lands are controlled by the provincial government. It's only 19% that are controlled by the federal government.
Thank you to everyone involved with APP. So a lot of people are possibly wondering what's going to happen with healthcare in Alberta. Personally, I think it's broken, and I certainly hope that there would be a different system and a better system, and that the College of Physicians and Surgeons would possibly no longer exist, since there's been so many doctors who've lost their jobs.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn this over to Dennis to talk about the system generally, but I don't know if any of you are aware of this. During COVID, I was very busy litigating against the government of Alberta, suing them on behalf of doctors that they were firing in the middle of a health crisis because they were too smart to get vaccinated, and others. And one of the things that happened to me was, jokingly, one day I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of AHS lawyers, and of course they're all making the big show of taking their COVID masks off because they've got a virtue signal to everybody. Of course, I walked into our Zoom room in my office without a mask on, and I said, just jokingly, I said, in case anybody's wondering why I'm not wearing a mask, I'm exempt. And of course, I meant exempt from stupidity, exempt from virtue signaling, exempt from all of the other bullshit we had to put up with during COVID. The very next day, so those lawyers from AHS went to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. They sent a raid team to my doctor's office, raided my doctor's office, and the first medical file they went to was yours truly's, right? To see whether my doctor had actually written me a COVID mask exemption so they could take his medical license away, okay? That's how corrupt the College of Physicians and Surgeons is. And of course, over the course of COVID, I wrote the College of Physicians and Surgeons numerous times saying, wait a minute, all of you seem to think it's important to interfere with the ability of doctors to give patients advice with regard to the safety of the COVID vaccines, whether or not they should or shouldn't wear masks. I mean, my view was I drafted a form of COVID vaccine exemption that simply said, I, Dr. So-and-so, have fully advised patient X of the benefits and reasons, for taking the vaccine or not taking the vaccine. They have made their own decision not to take it. So on the basis of the medical doctrine of informed consent, this patient is exempt from having to take a COVID vaccine. Period. That was my idea of a COVID medical exemption. And of course, the College of Physicians and Surgeons were literally threatening any doctor that suggested that form of exemption was appropriate with a loss of their licenses. So as far as I'm concerned, the College of Physicians is completely corrupt. They've actually fired, and I know this from whistleblowers that contacted my office, during COVID, any employee of the College of Physicians and Surgeons that wouldn't get vaccinated were fired for cause, but so they wouldn't make a fuss about it in the papers, they were paid double severance, right, to get rid of them because their values did not align with the values of the college, right? Those people are completely corrupt, and as far as I'm concerned, they need to be run out of town on a rail. So thanks for that question. And then with regard to reforming healthcare, the only comment I want to make with regard to the value of freedom is this is costed on basically maintaining all levels of funding for Alberta healthcare. So there's not a plan to cut funding, but keep in mind when Alberta becomes a zero income tax jurisdiction within 3 to 5 years, we're not going to have any difficulty attracting doctors and nurses and other qualified medical professionals to come and work in Alberta, right? And then with regard to completely gutting AHS and reforming the system in Alberta, I'll turn this over to Dennis. Sorry.
No, that's good. You can see how I would love it if the three of us up here were doing the negotiating with the federal government after we leave. But anyhow, if we get to, if we consider Alberta Health Services, let me take you back to 1995. At that time, the population of Alberta was 3.8 million people, and there were 5,000 employees working for Alberta Health. Here today, we have 5 million people, just 1.2 million more. And up until very recently, because I don't know the number, but up a few months ago, the number of employees at Alberta Health Services was, and possibly still is, are you ready for this? 130,000. Okay, think about that. Now, the budget right now is $28 billion for healthcare. That's 1/3 of the entire provincial budget. Now, you remember Don Mazinkowski? You know, he's probably one of the best federal MPs we ever had. But he was asked when he retired from federal politics, Ralph Klein asked him if he would do a health report. And I drafted the background document to that health report, and it was entitled Medicare is Killing Us, Reengineering the Canadian Healthcare System. And I can assure you, having worked in the system for 32 years, the corruption is at every single level, and we documented it. So, and if you think about it, if there's fraud, waste, and abuse in the healthcare system, there's an opportunity not to just improve cost, access, and quality. Well, actually it is an opportunity to improve quality and access, because access is the bigger problem. But we can reduce cost and provide far better services once we get control of healthcare. It can be so much better. How many people here are happy with the healthcare system right now? You know, has anybody had to wait months to get their care? And years, exactly. It's no wonder that people who can afford it wind up going to the US, because they just can't wait. We only have so much time on this earth, right? So this is the problem. And yeah, the healthcare system is badly in need of reform. But if you think about it, if healthcare needs reform, what about the other departments that are funded?
Just allude to the fact that this is only a recent, within the last 5 to 7 years, right? That this has gotten exponentially worse since 2015. Okay, so just understand that those people are the people that instituted all this and sped up all of this nonsense. So those are the people that we're trying to get rid of. Just understand. Go ahead.
So I came up here with one question, but it's just something I want to have clarified from a previous question regarding Danielle Smith. It has been said that she is a federalist, but she has also been accused of being a separatist. So is she, do you see her inside or outside? Or you're not sure yet where she's going to go?
I think that I can answer that by saying I'm not sure yet on where she's going to go, because she's told us, here's what's happened. She's reduced the threshold number from 600,000 to 173,000 and allowed us to make this process possible. Okay? Flat out, without question. So because she did that, we're in a process, we could have a referendum for independence. I'm not saying we couldn't have done it at 600,000, but it would have been a heck of a lot more work. But the other side to that is, as CEO of APP, I would have been very happy to try and make sure that we got 600,000, because it's a halfway to 1.2 million, which is probably what we're going to need to win. So we would have had to do that work, but we would only had to do it once. So, you know, but I mean, as it stands right now, a referendum for independence is an absolute reality based on that. So as far as that's concerned, she helped. And then 2 days later, she's got a red shirt on and red toenails, and she says, I'm Team Canada right from the top, from my red shirt down to my toenails. And so we're going to work with an independent Alberta within Canada. So you read her if you can. I'm just saying, as far as I'm concerned, she's going to wait to see what's going to happen, and then she'll get in front of it one way or the other.
Yeah, apparently she has 4 months left of her courtship with Mark Carney before she's going to have to decide to pull the plug or not. But everybody needs to understand that, you know, it's a very, you know, and I think your question sort of encapsulates that. You know, it's a very schizophrenic approach that she's taking to things. Oh yeah, these people that support independence, these are loyal Albertans, blah, blah, blah. But every time you turn around, she does something to try to undermine what we're doing. Like these what's next panels, and then having all these stupid questions on pensions, policing, whatever it is. She had the legislative authority and power to do that the day she was elected. But instead, she wants to talk about this stuff and then put it on a referendum to compete with our referendum question. She now wants to have a bunch of constitutional questions on the referendum ballot, which completely undermines our question as a clear standalone question under the Clarity Act. So that's why we're talking about having a special general meeting of the UCP or an SGM to clarify the fact that the question of independence, do you agree that Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada, needs to be a standalone question on a standalone referendum. And everybody in this room, you need to write your MLAs, email Danielle Smith, and tell her that that's what we expect. Yeah. And please, and go to the AGM, because we need to hold our feet to the fire. So thank you.
And so that leads to what my question is about the referendum question. Thomas Lukasik has put forward a referendum question. Where does that fit in this whole thing?
Little Tommy, we're going to ask a little Tommy question. No. We were laughing the other day. He actually has now, of course, he's off on holiday, so he isn't busy gathering signatures or organizing to get signatures. He actually, we've heard, is now asking Elections Alberta to please let him have the threshold lowered for his question to 177,000, because it's obvious that he thinks that he's not going to make the 300,000 signatures that he needs for a policy question. I can tell you, it's hard work, right? And you're not going to do it by vacationing with your wife in Hawaii when you should be out gathering signatures. And I think he's already figured out that he's not going to get the signatures that he needs. So we're not overly worried about his question. Our question is fundamentally different. It completely complies with Section 1, Sub 3 of the Clarity Act. Little Tommy's question is, should Alberta remain in Canada? It's like asking, should Alberta still be called Alberta? It's a dumb question, and it's a policy question. Ours is different. Ours is constitutional, and we're confident that our question will prevail. And frankly, he doesn't have the organization or the capacity to get the signatures he needs under the old act in any event. So thank you.
Hi, Mitch, you mentioned you wanted to work on youth outreach, specifically 18 to 25, and I was wondering if part of your plan is holding seminars on campuses, whether it's in...
I see a new volunteer. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, we intend to do that. And I'll pass the microphone back to Mitch. And we're working with people to start putting together stuff for TikTok, Instagram. We see that a lot of people in that age bracket live online. And I'm always shocked when I look at my X feed. The interactions on my X feed is literally 60% 20 to 29-year-olds, 29 to 40-year-olds. So that seems to be where that demographic lives. So we're after it. And if you are volunteering, please check in with us afterwards, because we'd love to have events organized on campus. Mitch, anything to add? Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you again.
My question is, again, thank you guys very much for your guys' input on everything and helping us out with this information. Money. So if we're leaving Canada, and we will, our currency, is it going to be Canadian currency or American currency?
We see initially that we're going to be trading in US dollars, because the future for Alberta we see is a free market with the United States, complete open border, no tariffs on either side of the border, etc. But we do see the benefit of creating an Alberta dollar, but we're anti-fiat currency, so the Alberta dollar will be backed by hard commodities, including gold, Bitcoin, and oil is the proposal.
So if I was you, and 3 days before the referendum, I would buy US dollars. So we don't have to listen to you complain about the drop of the Canadian currency. If we win, you'll have checked that box. So just FYI, that's what I'll be doing. So you know what? I would suggest that everybody do that.
So I'd like to comment on this as well. And I don't know if this will happen, but when Jeff and I were in Washington, one of the proposals that we made to help facilitate Albertans supporting the referendum on sovereignty, would the U.S. commit to allowing Alberta citizens to convert their Canadian dollar at the bank for $1 US. Now, this was a negotiating point, so I don't hang your hat on it because we don't know if they'll do it. But if you don't ask, you never know.
Thank you very much. Yeah. But, you know, whether it is or not, I mean, the tax benefits of an independent Alberta are clearly spelled out in this document, the value of freedom. You'd be looking at a 33 to 50% overall tax reduction in year 1. And by year 5, we would be a zero income tax jurisdiction. Let that sink in.
I keep hearing you calling it a Commonwealth of Alberta. So when I hear Commonwealth, I think of monarchy. So, well, does that mean we will be beholding to the United Kingdom?
No, all Commonwealth means is for the common good or for the good of the people. It's a general term that doesn't necessarily apply to the monarchy. I mean, when I hear republic, I think People's Republic of China. So, I mean, there's no perfect answer. Yeah. Well, no, and you have a Commonwealth of Virginia, Commonwealth of Kentucky, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, right? It's not, there's nothing nefarious in it. And quite frankly, the ongoing relationship with the monarchy, you know, is going to be a matter for a constitutional convention, and Albertans can vote on it, you know, whether we want to be, you know, continue to be governed by, or promote our lieutenant governor to governor general or not. I mean, I'm pretty ambivalent on the subject, so. Oh, and interestingly, there's something people need to internalize. On my birthday this year, it was a hell of a birthday present, May 27th, 2025, the government of Quebec literally voted to a unanimous resolution of the legislature of Quebec to abolish all ties between the government of Quebec and the British monarchy. So I'd like everybody to think about that, right? Because the Parliament in Ottawa, as we saw from the grand opening of Parliament by His Majesty the King, is His Majesty's Parliament. So I want everybody to consider or think about how the hell it is that we have 44 Liberal MPs from Quebec sitting in Parliament supporting Carney's government and 22 Bloc MPs sitting in Quebec supporting the Bloc Québécois if Quebec has severed all ties with the British monarchy. I don't think Carney's Prime Minister anymore, but hey, that's just me. Anyway, next question. Thank you.
My question's about the Criminal Code of Canada. So are we going to adopt that same code? Are we going to be changing it and altering it?
We have an interim constitution that we're working on. Obviously, there's going to be transitional provisions, right? So we can't all of a sudden on day 1 of independence have complete anarchy and have no criminal law in Alberta. So, you know, the Criminal Code of Canada would exist and, you know, until section by section, the sections that make no sense are repealed by a new Alberta government. Right.
All right, so I thought because Dennis, you were a physician, right? You were a doctor? Okay, and we were talking about healthcare reforms. The big issue to me is the euthanasia issue. I don't know if a lot of people know, but Carney and Trudeau put together a committee 2 years ago that's considering legislation to start euthanizing minors aged 1 to 17 without parental consent. They can force their way into the family home and arrest the parents.
Wow.
So that's my question for you guys, is if there's anything regarding the MAID issue. You're more likely to die of euthanasia than a car crash in Canada now. If there's anything that you guys have done towards that.
I'll let Dennis speak to that. I'm generally opposed to it on moral grounds. That having been said, I've turned to my wife recently and said, you know, if we're going to have MAID in Canada, every time a pedophile goes to jail, there should be a MAID brochure sitting on the bunk in their prison cell. But that's for me, that's probably the only good place for it. But I don't know if Dennis wants to comment on that or not.
Yeah, I think it's amoral, you know, what's been happening with MAID. I mean, in Canada, we have the highest extinction rate in the world per capita of any other country. I mean, I just think it's unconscionable. I spent my life trying to keep people alive, and to see this occur like this, and And really, just because you're depressed, you could request MAID, and there it is. Vets who may be having a little bit of difficulty are offered MAID without being offered care. You know, this is something. This is part of what I was saying earlier, that you know, these sorts of values are being shoved down our throat, and we don't ascribe to them, and we need to get out from under it. I'm not sure we can change the rest of the country, but we can sure as heck change what's happening here in Alberta.
So are you aware that Canada gives more organs per capita to the organ donation and selling organs than any other country in the world because of our MAID program? So just understand that that's a big part of the program. They're killing people for profit. So just FYI. So am I against it? Deathly against it.
Thank you for the question. Yeah. Very good question. Thank you.
Okay, day one. Alberta sovereignty. What does the legal path look like to get a pipeline to Tidewater?
Well, one of the great things is that we'll have multiple options. Alberta will certainly have a lot more leverage than we currently have now. You know, one of the things I always joke about, if you've heard of non-tariff trade barriers, really good non-tariff trade barrier, if BC doesn't want to give us a pipeline through British Columbia, would be to say, well, you know, Alberta's really proud of its rat-free status, right? So every train coming out of Vancouver is going to have to stop at the Alberta border to be inspected for 2 weeks for rats coming from Vancouver. And then while we're inspecting the train for Vancouver rats, we would then have our customs inspectors go on board and value all the goods being shipped to Ontario and put a 30% throughput tariff on all the goods on those trains, right? And I think you'd find British Columbia's attitude towards an Alberta pipeline to Tidewater improving substantially with that new leverage. The other thing is, of course, one of the big bars to pipelines into the United States, of course, is our federal government. Remember, you know, we had, you know, the gibbering Gibault was, you know, basically the minister in charge of pipelines during the last government. And of course, he wasn't going to be approving any U.S. pipelines. You know, we're very confident on the basis of our meetings in Washington, D.C., that an independent Alberta could immediately have 2 or 3 new pipelines into the U.S. out of Alberta, including a pipeline into Montana, through Idaho, Washington State, and to the port of Seattle to get oil out that way to Tidewater if we needed to. The other thing that people forget about, and for whatever reason it's not on Danielle's list, and again, it's another crooked Carney Brookfield corruption scandal, but does anybody here know that during Trudeau's last couple of years in office, with a stroke of a pen, he changed the railway tanker car specifications, right? And what that did was it meant that 90% of North American rolling stock on the rails that was capable of transporting Alberta oil to Texas was no longer legally allowed to cross the US-Canadian border because it didn't meet the new Trudeau specification that was obviously given to him by Mark Carney. And of course, the reason for that is there's only one company in North America that has rail cars that meet that specification, which is Berkshire Hathaway, which is in bed with Brookfield. Right? The only company in North America that manufactures rail cars that meet that specification is Berkshire Hathaway in bed with Brookfield, right? And of course that in and of itself has restricted you know, Alberta oil leaving the province, and that would change overnight as well. Well, I mean, as far as it goes, I mean, there's the you know, the UN Convention on access to, you know, for landlocked countries and access to you know, access to seaports. That would apply, but I mean, I think Alberta could just negotiate whatever it wanted, you know, much better than we can now. I mean, we're effectively landlocked now, right? You know, well, you know, we're policy locked now, and the minute we, you know, get the leverage to be able to negotiate our way out of that, we're going to be fine. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Scott.
Hey, Scott.
First time caller, long time listener. Anyway, I'll throw a few softballs up, but I would like to congratulate you guys in front of everybody. Like, before April 28th, we had a different country. It was still pretty crappy then. It's worse now. And the bow wave of volunteers and work that you guys have done to get us this far, and the value of freedom, the brilliant strategic move of going to the United States for the pre-delegation meetings. Great. Just a question. Have you considered doing other delegations with some other countries that may want to recognize us? Because Japan, Germany, Greece with the gas, or other countries that could help us out.
We are now. I mean, obviously we're pretty busy, but we'll try to find the time. And we want to continue barnstorming the province this summer. I mean, obviously we want to get out ahead of Danielle, and we want to be in every single town and community that she's speaking in to tell people that there is another way forward, and all these half measures that are being proposed by Team Canada just don't cut it and will never ever provide us the value that we will get by ending all federal regulation and all federal taxation in Alberta.
The media is pretending that either Danielle or Kamikaze Kam are leading the separation. How do we boost the image of APP? Like, a lot of people just don't seem to be aware of it and this plan.
Well, we're doing what we can. I mean, we're doing all of these town halls. We're trying to increase our online presence, both through, we have a planned social media campaign coming forward that we're going to be paying for social media advertising, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, et cetera, et cetera. We're planning a blitz going forward. And then on top of it, keep in mind, this is a 12-month fight. So it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, right? So, we've now started with the value of freedom and rolling out the fully costed business plan for an independent Alberta. I had one tweet actually the other day that I put out, or a post on X, where I was telling Danielle that it's time for her to comment on it. It got over 369,000 views, right? Linking to the APP site. So, I mean, the word is getting out. But then the next plan is, and I was glad to see Scott Payne here. He's one of our black hats. And there you are. Scott was involved in leading a group putting together a draft interim constitution for the province of Alberta that we're working on. So 3 weeks from now, after people are tired about hearing how wealthy we're going to be and how much money we're going to have when we're independent, then we're going to release the draft interim constitution, and then we're going to be running around the province saying, not only are we going to be really wealthy, but here's the constitution, and look how free we're going to be, right?
And just to add what Jeff said, some things that are going to happen as well. When we're going through that petition period, that's going to get tremendous publicity as well, because people are going to be wondering, well, can they pull off the petition? That should be very easy for us to do. But already something has happened that's never happened before with concerns that Albertans have had in terms of wanting to leave Canada. So for the first time, we have tremendous international recognition as well. All three of us have done media interviews with CNN, BBC, Germany, Japan. Yeah, and many of these media companies have been at our events as well, which is really interesting. So, yeah.
So as a CEO of APP, I'm going to ask you to raise money for us so that we can do that, because that's what this is all going to be about. I mean, we were broke 6 months ago, literally, okay? We're not broke anymore. So I'm just telling you that this is going to be a big fight. Somebody told me today that the other side is going to throw between $50 and $100 million at this, okay? So we have to fight back. And if we're going to fight back, so we got 250,000 people that that are signed up in our pledges. If everybody gave us $40, that would fund the whole thing. I mean, it doesn't have to be. Everybody doesn't have to give us money, but the thing of it is that the reality of it is this isn't going to be free. It's going to be, people are going to have to give money, people are going to have to give time, people are going to have to commit, people are going to have to work hard, because we're going to work hard every day for you. And we're coming to all these events for free, so I'm just saying that we're committed, so we need everybody else to have the same attitude and commit just as hard as we are, and then we'll win. And if we don't, we won't.
Yeah, and just quickly to add to that, I mean, as Mitch has alluded, we have been raising money, and there is a plan to have billboards out on every major highway in Alberta. We are going to get signage out, all of those things, but we're going to be rolling it out bit by bit and piece by piece. And everybody, just please keep in mind, we're seeing this as a 12-month campaign, and we're not going to be doing everything in month one. So we're starting with our media strategy by rolling this document out, then we're going to roll out the Constitution, we're going to have the internet blitz, then we're going to have the highway signage. There is a plan, and we're going to be following it. So just everybody be patient, it's coming. Yeah.
I just wanted to, you were starting to kind of answer one of the questions I had, which was the Constitution. I have to be honest, I've kind of been leaning a little towards 51st state versus independence, but I like the independence idea, but my concerns of that are the Constitution. We saw how Danielle Smith already basically ruined the Bill of Rights, the Alberta Bill of Rights, with Section 1 in there.
Yeah, well, I'm still furious over that.
I know. So it's like, this is one of my questions is two things. One, making sure that we have a real constitution with real rights that are inalienable, not privileges.
Absolutely.
And second, this might be a little controversial, but Canada, Alberta, United States was all founded under the supremacy of God. And that blessing that has.
We don't see that as being the least bit see that as being the least bit controversial,
Awesome.
And that's certainly in the draft constitution that we're working on. But and just so people know, I mean, what we're looking at, it's kind of a hybrid model. We're going to bring in some elements of the Swiss model, where you have citizen referendums and citizen input on all major government initiatives, right? We're going to have strict spending controls on government so that they're not allowed to, they're not allowed to run deficit budgets other than within very tightly controlled circumstances. We're going to have a bicameral legislature, so we're going to have a legislature or Congress based on population. But importantly, then we're going to have a Senate that's based on the region, so the cities can't basically override rural Alberta, et cetera. We're also looking at having, if we have 2 senators per region, 2 senators per treaty area, so the Indigenous people are represented within the Constitution on the basis of treaty area. We're going to have an elected executive, but more importantly, and these are some of the things that I'm really, really looking forward to, we're not going to have an attorney general that's a member of the cabinet. We're going to have an elected attorney general who is tasked with throwing crooked politicians in jail. Right? And we're going to have an elected auditor general. We're going to have, those types of positions that serve as watchdogs are going to be outside of cabinet, and they're going to be elected positions responsible to the people, and that we can have any one of them stand for re-election if we think they're not doing their jobs properly on as few as 50,000 signatures. Right? So it's going to be a true representative democracy, and we're going to fix, it's loosely follow the American model, but we're going to fix a lot of the problems that we've seen in the U.S. model. Like, as an example, the chief executive would have a line item veto, so that you can't have pork barrel budgets going up where people are stuffing budgets full of crap on behalf of their friends, things like that. So anyway, we're working on it. It's still a work in progress, and keep your eyes open. It should be out and ready to go in 2 or 3 weeks. Mitch wants to comment too.
So just understand what we just told you. So just understand what Danielle's position is here now. Her job is going to be extinct. And every politician in Alberta's job is going to be extinct or changed. So just understand the dynamic there between us and them, and their possible reluctance to get in front of this. Okay? Just saying that, I'm just saying that there's a self-preservation mode over there as well, because everything is going to change. And it has to. But I'm not saying that it shouldn't, but just understand what's going on from their perspective too. Okay.
You guys went down to the States and had your delegation and talked to them, and they'd recognize us as a sovereign. What if all the flip-flopping that goes on, we see daily, weekly, monthly between all the world leaders? What if they say, okay, yeah, you guys are good to go, and then we do our part, and then all of a sudden, oh, something happens, we change our mind, and then this, and everybody kind of boycotts us and puts us in a box? And is there a strategy kind of around that where all the leaders kind of don't recognize us and we're kind of SOL?
Well, I mean, we're very confident on U.S. recognition on a going forward basis. But again, we're doing this on the basis that we have a clear path to follow under Canadian law, and that's specifically the Clarity Act and the secession reference, which clearly identifies in paragraphs 154 and 155 a path for Alberta to leave Canada. Okay, so that's where we start from. I mean, as to all of the what ifs, I mean, I don't know what to say to that. I mean, it's all hypothetical at that point. But I mean, and all we can do is, is to move forward every day, keep putting one foot in front of the other. And as I often tell my wife, I'm not going to let fear or common sense me.
Just one other comment. Remember what Trump said? He said he wants continental-wide security and he wants energy security. And we can provide an element of continental-wide security, but we can definitely provide energy security. They want to do a deal with Alberta because we have a lot to offer. And it's not just oil and gas, it's minerals, it's agriculture, it's forestry, etc.
Hey, and we just got to note, this will be our last question. Our volunteers reminded us that we're being a little bit abusive tonight. It's 9:50 p.m. already, so we're going to wrap it up after this question, and just wanted to thank everybody so much for coming out.
My question goes back to tax, specifically, and it ties into property rights. Property tax. Right now, if you don't pay your tax, if you can't pay your property tax, you'll be on the street in 2 years. That's just the reality. So you really don't own your home if the government can step in and just take it away from you. What can we do about that?
We're aware of that. If you read this document, The Value of Freedom, we've posited a change to that because we think that, in effect, taxing people on the basis of the increased value of their property, in effect violates the right to property under the Alberta Bill of Rights. And we would have that as a fundamental principle, under the Constitution of a free Alberta. So we hear you on that, agree with you 100%, and it's going to be addressed. So thank you. And thank you so much for coming out. What a wonderful evening. And we were told to announce that there are donation options. If you want to donate by email transfer, you can go to donate@albertaprosperity.com or donations at www.albertaprosperity.com. So thank you all very much for coming out. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for coming out. Yeah. Yeah.